Let's be honest for a second. We are all facing completely unprecedented levels of digital overload, chronic stress, and attention fragmentation right now. Our cognitive endurance is just constantly being tested by this endless barrage of notifications, emails, and demands. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're exploring a really fascinating contradiction at the very heart of modern life. On one hand, the proposed antidote to our digital burnout, traditional mindfulness and meditation, often feels like just another massive chore on an already impossible to-do list. There is this pervasive myth out there that to meaningfully protect our mental health, to optimize our sleep, and to actually age healthily, we need to carve out hours of free time just to sit silently on a cushion. But what if that foundational assumption is entirely wrong? What if the key to unlocking all of these interconnected health systems isn't about the sheer quantity of time you spend, but rather the strategic placement of ultra-brief pauses? So that brings us to a question that sounds almost too good to be true. Can a mere 60-second micropause actually alter your entire biological network? No way, right? Well, to answer that, we have to stop treating the human body like a collection of isolated parts. It's a highly integrated system. Micromental health affects your sleep. Your sleep directly affects your brain health. And your brain health ultimately dictates your cellular longevity. It's all connected. We're going to look at some incredible emerging research showing that ultra-brief micropractices don't just offer temporary stress relief. They trigger a massive cascading domino effect throughout the whole body. We're talking about physically remodeling our brain architecture, sending signals down the vagus nerve to alter our gut microbiome, and even reaching deep into our cells to protect our DNA from aging. Okay, let's dive into this by looking at the actual science of the dose-response relationship. For years, the traditional clinical data, like those extensive longitudinal studies by Bowles and Van Dam, suggested that you needed substantial daily practice to see results. Specifically, they said 35 to 65 minutes a day, which, let's be real, is a luxury most of us absolutely do not have. And to meaningfully improve severe mental health distress, they thought you needed up to 80 minutes a day. But modern clinical reality, mostly fueled by just how crazy fast-paced our work environments have become, has shifted hard toward digital micromeditations. We're talking interventions ranging from just 1 to 10 minutes. Now, the scientific debate around this has been incredibly intense. Can such tiny doses actually create lasting physiological change, or are they just a glorified wellness placebo? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the data from a recent fully remote, randomized controlled trial coordinated by researchers at Stanford. They evaluated an ultra-brief digital meditation intervention that required just 10 minutes of practice a day for 8 weeks. And the results? They were profound. Not only did participants see significant, sustained reductions in anxiety and mind-wandering, but the data showed highly distinct improvements in working memory and cognitive control. Fascinatingly, these cognitive improvements were the most significant for the folks who were in the lowest performing quartile at baseline. In other words, this ultra-brief intervention produced the absolute most dramatic cognitive enhancements exactly where the symptom burden was the highest. It proves that low-dose meditation is a highly effective, completely scalable tool for brain health and deep work. To truly understand why these cognitive improvements matter so much in the real world, we have to talk about human behavior. Specifically, a phenomenon called repetition bias. A recent study in communication psychology demonstrated something pretty wild. Simply repeating a choice in a given context, even if there's no actual reward attached to it, biases us toward making that exact same choice again. We literally become more confident in choices we've merely repeated over and over. We mistake mere familiarity for actual wisdom. Because of this, we are constantly defaulting to the same digital habits, the same automated stress responses, and the same distracted workflows without any conscious awareness whatsoever. A micropause acts as a critical circuit breaker here. It actively interrupts this digital hypnosis, shifting our brain right out of autopilot so we can reclaim our cognitive independence. And here's the craziest part. This circuit breaking isn't just psychological. It is intensely, measurably physical. When we engage in these micro-practices, we are actually engaging in central neuroanatomical remodeling. Functional neuroimaging shows that mindfulness upregulates the prefrontal cortex. That's the area responsible for executive function and deep work focus. It actually increases gray matter density in the hippocampus, which is critical for your memory. And at the exact same time, it downregulates the amygdala, which is our brain's fear and stress center. This neuroplasticity is so powerful, it's honestly mind-blowing. Get this. In clinical settings, chronic pain patients literally use real-time fMRI neurofeedback and mindfulness to consciously shrink the virtual visualization of their brain's pain centers, physically reducing their subjective pain severity. Now, these structural brain changes actually support a fantastic concept in behavioral psychology known as the broaden and build theory, developed by Barbara Fredrickson. This theory posits that experiencing even fleeting, brief moments of positive affect actually expands our immediate cognitive repertoire. So when you take a micro break during a chaotic workday, you aren't just resting or checking out, you are actively generating a positive affect that acts as a vital mediator. This broadened state allows us to see unexpected solutions, collaborate better, and build long-term physical and social resources. It is the exact polar opposite of that narrowed, tunnel vision state induced by the chronic fight-or-flight stress of the modern workplace. But of course, this positive affective loop is highly sensitive to our physiological foundation, most notably our sleep architecture. Sleep optimization is just incredibly deeply interconnected with our micromental health. Research tracking healthcare workers showed that prior night sleep quality acts as a vital boundary condition. We all know that when you have a poor night's sleep, your baseline emotional regulation is totally compromised and your resources are depleted. But under these exact conditions of sleep debt, a morning micromeditation becomes incredibly powerful. It acts as a dynamic buffer, fostering positive affect that protects your mental health and preserves your end-of-day vitality. It proves that brief mindfulness can actively compensate for disrupted circadian rhythms. So let's look at how this builds into our broader physiology, because the cognitive calm and stress reduction we achieve in the brain doesn't just stay in the brain, it travels. Specifically, it travels straight down the vagus nerve. Think of the vagus nerve as the primary superhighway of our parasympathetic nervous system, leading directly into the gastrointestinal tract. The vagal tone alterations induced by a simple mindful breathing exercise actually change intestinal permeability, mucosal blood flow, and local immune responses. This means that a 60-second mental reset is simultaneously acting as a real-time intervention for your gut health, stabilizing your entire gastrointestinal microenvironment. To truly grasp the depth of this gut-brain connection, look at how different meditative movement practices literally cultivate different biological ecosystems. A fascinating study analyzed the gut microbiomes of deep meditative martial artists. They found that Aikido practitioners who engage in higher intensity mindful movement showed a huge enrichment of specific short-chain fatty acid-producing bacteria, like Faecalibacterium and Roseburia. Put simply, these are the good guys. They're absolutely critical for maintaining your gut barrier integrity and suppressing systemic inflammation. In contrast, slower movement Tai Chi practitioners exhibited higher relative abundances of Prevotella and Collinsella. The profound takeaway here is that the specific type of mindful movement you practice fundamentally alters the taxonomic abundance of your gut flora. It's all connected. If we zoom all the way down from the gut to the DNA level, we uncover the cellular longevity cascade. We know that psychological stress accelerates biological aging by shortening our telomeres. Those are the protective nucleoprotein caps on the ends of our chromosomes. However, the evidence shows that mindfulness practices actively combat this cellular senescence. These micro-practices literally upregulate the telomerase enzyme, which preserves and even rebuilds telomere length. Furthermore, meditation downregulates NF-κB, a key protein complex that drives inflammation, and reduces circulating C-reactive protein, which is a primary marker of bodily stress. In short, these micropauses are actively slowing down the biological aging process at the molecular level. And this brilliantly illustrates the systemic domino effect we've been tracking today. The data across robust clinical trials proves that mindfulness isn't just a psychological tool, it's a multi-systemic physiological intervention. Brief mindfulness practices have been shown to decrease systolic and diastolic blood pressure, increase cardioprotective HDL cholesterol, and even strengthen our adaptive immune defense by increasing CD4 plus T helper cells. You can think of them as the generals of your immune system, all while enhancing vaccine antibody responses. Literally, every system, cardiovascular, inflammatory, immunological, and microbiome, is positively responding to the deliberate regulation of human attention. But understanding the biology is only half the battle. We have to actually apply this to our daily behavior. Dr. Shalini Bahal, a mindful marketing professor, brilliantly points out that feeling calmer on a meditation cushion and changing actual real-world decisions are two entirely different things. She notes, we don't have one unified self making all these decisions. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a fragmented self. Your morning self might set great intentions, but your stressed out consumer self is the one making impulsive choices at the digital checkout or snapping in a high-stakes meeting. If our mindfulness doesn't reach the exact moment where our decisions are formed, it entirely fails to translate into real-world resilience. So how do we bridge that gap? Well, Dr. Ball offers a highly actionable 3-step framework that you can execute in a single breath to disrupt your default autopilot. Return, listen, begin. First, return. Deliberately redirect your attention away from the automatic pattern and anchor it right in the physical body. Feel your breath or your heartbeat. Second, listen. Turn toward the underlying needs, fears, or assumptions that are driving the impulse rather than just the surface reaction. Finally, begin. Make a conscious choice to respond in a way that is actually aligned with your genuine values. This structure tool takes literally seconds, but it engages the full spectrum of our physical, emotional, and mental intelligence. To ensure these micro practices actually happen, behavioral science points to habit stacking. Relying on willpower alone is a terrible idea. It just leads to decision fatigue. In fact, trying to build too many new habits at once can increase decision fatigue by 73%. Instead, we need to securely stack micro practices onto existing, automatic daily triggers. For example, when you open your inbox, use that as the trigger for 1 minute of box breathing. While the lifeblood of the modern worker, your morning coffee, brews, do a 5-minute meditation. Spend the 2 minutes walking to a meeting and silent reflection. When you plug your phone in at night, let that trigger your evening wind-down routine. By anchoring these moments in your existing environment, consistency becomes completely effortless. So the crucial point we are left with is this. Your health, your focus, and your longevity are not dictated solely by what you do during an hour at the gym or weekend wellness retreat. They are shaped by the hundreds of micro moments that make up your day. We've seen the profound interconnected evidence of how just 60 seconds of intention can rewire your brain, buffer your sleep debt, optimize your gut microbiome, and protect your cellular DNA. The tools are immediately accessible to you right now. They require zero equipment and almost no time. So I'll leave you with this question. In the pause before your very next click, before your next reaction, which default will be running? The choice, and the biology that follows it, is entirely yours.